love them. Thank you very much.
Και τώρα καλούμε στο βήμα τον καθηγητή Νίλ Τάουερς από το Πανεπιστήμιο Heriot-Watt της Σκωτίας, του Εδιμβούργου.
So I might deny it now. Yeah. Right, okay. Yes, I've... well, actually, what? Is it good? Kostos? We okay? Right, okay. I've been listening to a 4-hour lecture on economics and politicians in Greek since about 2 o'clock this afternoon. And you can get quite depressed, I think. I actually thought you guys were not retailers the way you were attentively listening to economics. I thought you were all... No, because I don't want them to hear me. Okay. Hello. Yes. I wanted to walk. I walk around. I can't stand still. I'm a retailer, you know. So I was listening to you guys, and I just thought... You were so attentive and listening to the speakers. I thought you must be, I don't know, economists or IT specialists or consultants or something, you know. But they tell me retailers. So, good. So I wrote down 4 notes because I was going to change my presentation. And the first one was, I'm actually English, which I didn't think was quite a good thing to be, listening to these 3 guys earlier. But I'm not English, because I come from Heriot-Watt University, which is in Scotland. So I'm Scottish, and there's a big difference, you see. So I have a dual nationality passport. Well, I will when we get independence. I'm working on that. So that was the first thing I thought. And then the lady from the IMF said she didn't like retail. So I thought this is going to be an even shorter presentation. But then... I'm a retailing head, and although I'm an academic, I joined academia late. I actually had a proper working life up until about 1994, which wasn't that long ago really. And the gentleman started talking about how you needed a Land Rover. Well, that's how it came across on the translation on my ear. It was stuck in the mud, and you needed Land Rovers to take you out. So I thought, that's good. How many do you want? More than 10's a discount, but of course, being Greek, it's cash, okay? Because anything else we don't want. So I thought that was good. And then the final thing was, in a serious vein, was that it's a really difficult situation Greece is in at the moment, that's for sure, okay? And I wouldn't want to devalue it at all. But we had a lady once in 1979 who lived in a town called Grantham. And she was a shopkeeper. Well, in fact, she was the daughter of a shopkeeper. She was a shopkeeper's daughter. And 2 years after she came to power, and you might have heard of her, something called Thatcher, something like that. But 2 years after she came to power, there's a little-known fact that I talk about in my economics lectures to our undergrad students, is that she called in the IMF. We were bust. UK PLC was bust. And we had pretty much similar problems. We had rioting on the streets, we had a punch-up, and I used to play rugby, so, you know, if it's a punch-up, send Neil in, he'll sort them out. With the social fabric, the coal miners, there was a real serious problem undermining the whole of the fabric of the UK economy. And it was a very, very serious situation. It wasn't to be made light of. But, you know, bring the clock forward to 2011, and the IMF came to see us. Well, not me personally. They came to see the UK government about a month ago. And they said what we were doing, they gave us a mark of 6 out of 10. And when I was at school, 6 out of 10 was quite good. So I thought, you know, this lecture, you see I like moving around, this lecture was going to be quite short, really. But what I wanted to do was to give a different perspective to retailing. And just understand the journey that we've been through and share it with you a little bit. I feel I'm looking over here, but you guys are over there. So you must have paid less than those guys, have you? Is that how it works? Right, okay, so there's a little bit of an agenda, but you don't want to see that. The important bit is in retail, as you well know, we've changed. And we've changed, particularly in clothing. I suppose that's what I'm going to focus on, clothing and shoes. But it does apply to music and to food as well. You can see these brands, and you're pretty familiar with those brands. And if you're not, well, I can talk to you about them later. But Ralph Lauren, Burberry, Gucci, Armani, very, very famous European brands. But everyone wants them now. And it's what you were saying earlier, it's the democratisation where people want it cheap, they want it lower priced. And so these guys worked that out. And they made it so that it was available to many more people than was the case a generation ago. And that's really about how the retail environment has to move from design or innovation into sales. Because there's a very simple rule in retailing. If you don't sell anything, you made the money. It's as straightforward as that. And we have this constant discussion as well about politicians and autocrats about how they should get on and sort out the funding side of it. Because as a retailer, we want people footfall, we want people through the stores, we want product to sell. But we had to change quite a lot of things because my little friend here, which is a Lian Feng toy, doesn't and isn't made in the UK, it's not even made in Europe. Some of the technology actually comes from the States. But we had to make a serious change, and this is a serious message really, back in the 70s and 80s when I actually was working in the car trade, which was a feisty environment to be in. But we saw all of that, and I probably was that polar bear on the iceberg as it disappeared and melted and had to look for something to do. So I became an academic, so that seemed to be all right for me. I joined the masses and looked for a good pension. Never was quite like that in the UK, but the point about this is that that change was inevitable. The whole process of offshore manufacturing became, in the 70s and 80s particularly, something that was predictable, pretty much. And the manufacturing that I knew, the car manufacturing, the accessories manufacturing, Lucas Industries where I worked, that went down, that just finished because we weren't good at it. And it's not that we weren't good at it technically, we weren't good at it in terms of selling product. And in cars, we never thought that was retail anyway. We thought that was something different. But now it's very much a retailing activity. But in the textiles, it was very controlled, the old world. We had quotas that regulated who could sell what. We had very inefficient supply chains, stuff you might resonate with you now at the moment. Overcapacity, demand, pretty much in Europe and the US, but not much abroad. And then we had this argument, constant argument about can we compete, and we talked about Turkey quite a lot because they still had then a good textile sector. Could we compete against China? Because all this foreign stuff was coming in, that's why we looked at it. And we were looking at it the wrong way really, we were looking down the telescope the wrong way, quite frankly. And what happened was that there was a power shift, and you talked about that earlier, where the manufacturers were quite strong then, and then the retailers started to become dominant, you guys started to take control of what you were doing, and you started to understand how you could understand what the customer wanted. Because I have to say, so far, I hadn't really heard much about the customer. I'd heard lots about politics, taxation, fiscal policy, very important, but I never heard once about the customer. And I think that was something that we learned in a hard way in Europe, and maybe something that comes across here a little bit. Certainly, the distribution was very fragmented, and there was just a general decline, pretty much, in fashion, and particularly in the retailing sector. Marks & Spencer, which is a brand some of you might know about, in 1998 made a huge profit, made $1 billion. All right? 1 year later, 12 months, it lost 400 million in 12 months. That's quite good going, really, to get to 600,000 turnover. And it did that really by not understanding the marketplace, by being totally arrogant, not really understanding what the customers wanted. And actually, there were new people on the block at that time. One was called Next, which is a guy that we know quite well, George Davies, who helped us out a little bit at Heriot-Watt. But he came up, and another guy came up with a new idea. And that was, we can do better than Marks & Spencer. And we can do something that they've done very well, but do it better from them. So we started to think about the coat hanger. How do you get this product on a shelf to sell it. That was a simple message, really, and that's pretty much what we and I researching in terms of my supply chain expertise and how we got to that. And there's a lot of serious business in this. There's a lot of money to be made, essentially, if you look at some of this stuff. M&S had quite a decent market share. The top 5 retailers combined to 43%. So there's quite a concentration of sales, but there were customers. And the whole process of this was trying to develop brand, trying to develop something that was unique and different. And amongst this, in this period, was some dire economic outlook. 83, 84 wasn't a good time in the UK. It was pretty similar to the experience you're having at the moment. So it wasn't as if there was, roses and sun was out. No, it was raining a bit, as it does in Scotland quite a lot. And there was some change going on, I think, and the multi-channel distribution started its life here, and I'll come back to that in a minute. But the basis for internationalisation started to become quite an important issue. And I suppose we should be louder and stronger as an academic force telling the commercial world what was happening was actually predictable. Outsourcing, producing offshore was something that had happened almost since the 16th century. And at one point Europe had benefited from it, but it had passed. The weather forecast had passed and it had now gone east. And it's not gone east for long. It's now going to South America. And it was a year ago. If I listen to some famous words by the New Look's supply chain director, the new place to go, he said, was Libya. And I thought, say that again now, because the idea of it was North Africa was actually quite a useful place to be. But of course you don't always see what's happening in the politics of the world. And also for us in textiles there were new entrants. So you had the likes of Tesco, which you guys had talked about, and I know Neil's going to talk about it in a bit, who'd come in stole the march on retailers selling clothes, whereas originally they just sold food. But they'd stretched the food supply chain enough that they couldn't make no money from it, so they started to do something else. And that's still today an ongoing process where Tesco's, I guess you'll talk about this, Neil, are into everything. If you can buy it, if they can sell it, they're into it. If they make money out of it as well. But if they don't make money out of it, they drop it like a stone and look for something that they can do. So new entrants put this Primark as an important retailer for us in the UK. Primark is actually owned by a biscuit company, okay, but it stole a march on the high street. It's an Irish company owned by United Biscuits. They make biscuits as a living and also make clothing at prices that we thought were never possible. So there was a change, and this is the change I wanted to throw up. Nearly 50% now production comes out of China. And I spend quite a lot of my time now in China and Vietnam and Asia looking at this to see how that's moving on. And just taking a typical cloth garment here, made in Hong Kong, the zips made in Japan, the filters in China, the linings from Taiwan. So it's more a global activity. And I suppose I should stop here and say, well, actually the first thing we should do as a retail process is just ask you a bit about geography and ask you where some countries are. Because for our students, they think they're coming to do retailing. Actually, they've got to find out, do they know a little bit about geography first. But, and that's quite important because it is a global process now. It's not a UK, it's not a Europe, it's a global process. And that's really about how you stretch and push that fast, quick and responsive. Those are the important bits. And make sure you don't have any left over. So you've worked out how you manage that financial risk. And 2004 was quite an important year for textiles because all the rules I talked about earlier went. They just disappeared. So all the